The Gainesville Times is on TikTok.
That's right, we're on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook. Find us at Gainesville Times or G Times News to get the latest about what's going on in Hall County. Reach our listeners with your brand right here on Taken Too Soon. If you're interested in being a part of the show as a sponsor, email our team at marketing@gainesvilletimes.com to get more information.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on the Taken Too Soon podcast are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views, opinions, or positions of the host or contributors. This podcast deals with mature topics that may not be suitable for all listeners. Material heard on the Taken Too Soon podcast is intended for adult listeners. Listener discretion is advised.
In the last 2 episodes of Taken Too Soon, we sat down and talked with former Hall County investigator Marty Nix, who played a major part in the missing person case for Elaine Nix back in 1999, and to Dr. John Hager, an assistant professor at the University of North Georgia's Criminal Justice Department, who walked us through Elaine's autopsy report. As a reminder to our listeners, Elaine Nix was last seen using a payphone outside of Zack's food rack before her nude body was found near an industrial park, just 1 road and 2 miles past the Hall County-Gwinnett County line on September 29, 1999. The Nix family feels that they have been left in the dark since the investigation began, and now, 25 years later, the family feels that they are no closer to finding the answers behind Elaine's tragic end, and no closer to getting the justice they believe needs to be served in this case.
And it's very hard to get in touch with the Gwinnett County detective. And the cold case detective is always changing, and so it's hard to keep up with it, and it's hard to get a phone call back. Even her parents have had trouble.
We always have to call them. And then a lot of times we wouldn't get any answers from them. So we just finally, just quit calling, because they would always tell us that nothing new on the case, that it's a cold case now. So pretty much I just think it's in a filing cabinet somewhere.
I just think that her case is up on a shelf collecting dust, and I watch enough detective shows to know that they can solve murders after 30, 40, 50 years. So I don't think they're putting in the effort.
Before we get into the theories of Elaine's murder, trying to answer how it could have happened and who could have committed this heinous act, we must take a moment to state that no suspect has ever been publicly named in this case since the investigation began in 1999. Open records requests by the Times have yielded very little in uncovering possible avenues to investigate when looking into who could have taken Elaine's life.
Hall County was the most responsive, supplying the Times with a 96-page document which covered most of the missing persons investigation, which was being actively worked on until her body was found off Verona Avenue in a Buford industrial park. However, despite the document being lengthy, deep searches into the document have produced very little in means of solid tips or leads to work from in our own investigation into what happened to Elaine Nix on that September night in 1999. Gwinnett County, who has headed the Elaine Nix death investigation, has been far less forthcoming with information on the case.
Yeah, they don't seem to want to turn over anything.
Our initial open records request to Gwinnett County netted us a 2-page report, which was essentially just a document recording Gwinnett County's initial response to Elaine's body being discovered by employees of Industrial Cutting Die, located in the Verona Avenue Industrial Park.
After receiving the 2-page document, we reached out to the Gwinnett County Cold Case Unit Supervisor, Sergeant Micah Hegwood. After repeated emails and phone calls, we finally received a response from Sergeant Hegwood, which read, quote, "I have been working on this case after the friends and family of Elaine reached out to me. I am still working on this case and probably will be for quite some time. The request for materials you're making would be detrimental to the investigation, and I would not release those items on any case that was unsolved. I've listened to several podcasts recently regarding Elaine Nix's murder, and a lot of information has been broadcast already. At this time, I will not be releasing any further information." End quote.
We also asked Deputy Chris Farmer, who was one of the initial officers working the case, for an interview, as well as any other member of the Hall County Sheriff's Office willing to speak with us about their investigation. The Hall County Sheriff's Office's Public Information Officer, Derek Booth, wrote a response saying, quote, Because Gwinnett County's case is still open, we'll have to respectfully decline participation, even on the missing persons front." End quote.
With that being said, the next 2 episodes of Taken Too Soon will consist of the theories behind Elaine's murder, which either came up through eyewitness accounts from the night she went missing, from theories mentioned during interviews with friends and family, and from a letter that was deemed a, quote, hoax by Hall County in 2006, but whose details appeared to be, at the very least, plausible.
Because there were no publicly named persons of interest, the Times has opted to only refer to most people in these episodes by their first name.
With no possible suspects being named by law enforcement in the 25 years since Elaine's murder, we had to look at anyone and everyone that came onto our radar. Whether this was a crime of opportunity committed by a complete stranger to Elaine, or whether it was a crime committed by someone Elaine knew, we weren't going to leave any stone unturned in our investigation.
Every piece of information, no matter how absurd, it's like you've got to follow up on them, because sometimes the craziest things turn into some of the most important things. So I would never discount anything of that nature, because in this particular case, we're nowhere. So any information that we have, and that's why I'd encourage the public, somebody knows something. I know somebody out there. And I've worked cases in the past where years later, an ex-husband or an ex-female, a wife, a girlfriend, they decide their conscience is speaking to them, and they come to law enforcement and say, "I will tell you what happened back in 1999. It's bothered me." And I'm hoping it's bothering them as much as it is me. The way that I would approach is there's never, you always look into every lead, and you never discount any lead. However, crazy it may sound, you always try to follow up on those leads. We interviewed, and I'll give you, we'd interview females. I remember myself and Sergeant Atlantic interviewing females that had encounters with, men, and if it were a drug deal, at that time, there was quite a bit of crack cocaine use, so we were constantly on the streets talking to crack addicts and, people that may have been in that arena of our community. And we were just grasping at straws. Anybody that we could find that said, "Hey, did you hear about this? Yeah. You heard about any other females being, accosted or whatever?" We would go and hit the streets, and we had informants in those days. We had a lot of street level informants, drug dealers, prostitutes, things of that nature that we would get and, put them in the back of our car and we're taking a ride, and they would tell us information based on, drug activity. And so we followed all of those leads out. However, we could not find a connection to any of those leads that would lead back to her.
Based on an interview included in the case file we received through our open records request pertaining to Hall County's missing person investigation, it seems that there were some shady individuals in the area around the time of Elaine's disappearance. The interview in question happened on October 25th, 1999. According to the case file, investigators Marty Nix and Gerald Couch went to the Hall County Detention Center to speak with an inmate who we'll name Katie.
The 2 investigators had been informed by Sergeant Carol Martin of the Gainesville Police Department that Katie had information, quote, concerning an act of prostitution which may have been relevant, end quote, to the Elaine Nix case. When the 2 investigators interviewed Katie, she admitted that she was a prostitute and that on the Saturday after Elaine went missing, she was picked up by a white male on Cooley Drive around 1 a.m. Katie told the investigators that she did not know this man, nor had she seen him before. She described the man as being very tall, approximately 6'6", with a good build.
Katie also described the man's vehicle as being a dark blue work van which did not have windows on the side but did have windows on the back doors. She stated that the man had several heavy metal boxes in the back of the van which he said contained porcelain dolls. The man told Katie that his name was Tony and that he was a welder from South Carolina.
Katie told Nix and Couch that the driver's seat in Tony's van was broken and was supported by another metal box. Katie went on to tell the investigators that Tony drove them to a remote location off Candler Highway near an abandoned house. She stated that Tony acted as though he knew where he was going, despite him telling her he was from South Carolina earlier.
Katie said that it was at this point that she started to become very uneasy and felt unsafe. Katie went on to describe that during the sexual encounter with Tony, he forced her to the back of the van and at one point choked her. Katie said Tony was very rough with her and told her, quote, "You're being such a good girl," end quote. Katie told the investigators that at some point she believed the man was going to kill her.
She continued to tell Nix and Couch that the passenger door could be opened by the outside, but that the door would not open from the inside and was attached by a bungee cord. After the sexual act, Katie told the investigators that she was able to exit Tony's vehicle through the passenger window. She stated that after she was able to get out of the van, she ran down Candler Highway where approximately 14 cars passed her.
Katie said that she was finally picked up by a white male who took her to the Master's Inn. 2 days later, Lieutenant Nix and Sergeant Lanik took Katie from the Hall County Detention Center and asked her to take them to the location where she was taken by the subject in the blue van.
The trio proceeded to a remote location near Fullenwinder Road off Highway 60 where Katie had said she had been assaulted. Afterwards, Sergeant Lanik informed Investigator Nix that Katie's statement could be substantiated due to the fact that a white male, whom Lanik had encountered at a part-time job he worked, had informed him that he was the one who picked up Katie while she was walking down Candler Highway. Lanik told Nix that the male stated the woman he picked up had claimed that she had been assaulted.
There is no other mention of this incident or Tony in the rest of the case file, but the story gives an indication that there were some shady and possibly dangerous individuals lurking about in the area where Elaine was last seen alive.
The lack of information about Elaine's case made us believe that, much like Marty Nix had told us, any and all tips or leads had to be looked at, examined, and either discarded or set aside for further analysis.
So, as with any homicide case, the first person we looked at as a possible person of interest was Elaine's boyfriend at the time, Billy Millwood III. From the stories that we had heard from Elaine's family and friends, we were able to piece together that the night Elaine disappeared, she had received a page from Billy which read FUB.
I know that she went to the payphone because he sent her a very vulgar text. Back then, you'd have to decipher it. So they were arguing at the time.
And when you say vulgar, was it disparaging toward Elaine, like calling her nasty names?
FUB.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Everything happens online with high-speed internet these days, but back when kids in the 90s were growing up, the internet was just starting out. It wasn't central to everything. And if someone in your house needed to use the phone, you had to log off the dial-up internet and find something else to do. For Elaine, calling her boyfriend Billy in Cleveland from her house in Gainesville was considered a long-distance call.
Many households blocked long-distance calls from being made to save themselves from unexpectedly large bills at the end of the month. Although everyone owns and has a cell phone on them at all times today, in the 90s, mobile phones were fairly rare. Pagers, however, were a popular and reliable alternative to mobile phones for personal communication. They were cheaper, smaller, and could send messages instantly to multiple people at once.
Pagers were also more reliable than cell phones because they weren't dependent on cellular networks that could become overloaded during emergencies or have dead zones. The popularity of pagers declined at the end of the 90s as mobile phones became more prevalent. Many people utilized codes which would signify to the recipient who they were. This was no different for Elaine and her friends.
Yeah, we all had our pagers and we had our certain code when we paged somebody from the payphone so they'd know it was us.
So on the night of September 20th, 1999, Elaine received a page from Billy which read FUB. The rather vulgar page immediately put Elaine in a rush mode. The 18-year-old threw on some clothes, a white t-shirt, a pair of khaki pants, and a pair of white K-Swiss sneakers. Elaine knew from previous experience that she could ride to the payphones at Zack's Food Rack 5 minutes down the road from her Ironwood Drive address. All she needed was a little pocket change and she could talk to Billy for as long as she wanted.
She said that he had paged her and put in a bad word and she was going to go to the payphone because she could go and talk as long as she wanted to for a quarter back then. So she we hadn't lived at that house but 4 months, and she would do that periodically, go to that payphone and talk, because we had a phone, but it was long distance from our phone. So she would just always do that.
According to phone records pulled by Hall County law enforcement after Elaine's disappearance, Elaine called Billy around 11:10 p.m. and the two talked until just after midnight. According to the case file, Billy and his aunt went to the Hall County Sheriff's Office to file a missing person report 2 days later on September 22nd.
Billy told Hall County that he had been talking to Elaine a couple nights previous when she called him from the payphone at Zack's food rack. Billy told law enforcement that he and Elaine had talked about a football game and admitted that the two had been in an argument.
However, Billy stated that Elaine told him that, quote, she would change, end quote. Billy went on to tell Hall County investigators that he and Elaine had ended the conversation on good terms and that the call ended just after midnight.
However, what really transpired on the call between Elaine and Billy is shrouded in mystery, according to Elaine's family and friends.
He won't tell us what they talked about. He has yet to tell. He has teased her parents, especially her dad, like, hey, I want to talk to you. Like, and he's took them for a ride and things like that. But he still will not tell us what they talked about.
He just said they talked on the phone for about an hour, and they talked about going camping, and they loved each other, and then they hung up. Anytime he called us, we would go and see where he was or talk to him and things. But his dad told us one time that he was getting ready to talk, but then he never did talk. He came to one candlelight, I think it was the 10th year, and he told David he wanted to take him home, and he had something to talk to him about, but he never did talk.
Billy told Hall County that he decided to file a missing person report on Elaine after her cousin contacted him looking for Elaine in the early morning hours of September 21st.
Billy spoke with Hall County law enforcement on several occasions, but it appears nothing suspicious was noted during these conversations.
First thing you look at is, let's look at relationships. You know, is it a lover? Is it, somebody owe him money? What is the motive? And that's what you're getting to, motive. And a lot of times, that is a motive. It's like a jealous boyfriend or a jealous girlfriend, or, there's something going on that and I've worked many cases where that is in fact the case. However, in this particular case, no evidence pointed to him being a suspect.
The fact that Billy was on the phone with Elaine from his house in Cleveland on the night she disappeared, along with his cooperation with law enforcement, made Hall County feel that Billy was not a person of interest.
If somebody was in that parking lot, and I put this on, and I know all three of you are right there with me, if there was someone in that parking lot that made that woman, and I'm going to call her a woman because she's earned that right, she would have told him. She would have told Billy.
Yeah,
to call her dad.
Yeah,
to call
she
her
didn't
mom,
feel comfortable.
that she didn't feel comfortable.
That's true.
To three-way her parents right now.
Or
to
call one of
follow her
us
home
or
because
something.
she was uncomfortable. Even though she would have done that.
Well, Billy's number was blocked.
Yeah.
But
long distance, remember? It
Yeah.
was long distance.
Well,
Yes.
it was long distance,
she
but his
would've-
number was blocked.
Yeah.
Call one of us or
she would have
call
said, call
Yeah.
Beth, call
Jennifer, call Kathy,
Lindsay.
call
Somebody call somebody so they can call my parents because I'm uncomfortable and I do not want to get off the phone until they get here. That's the type of person she was. If she was scared or something made her uncomfortable, she wasn't going to lay down and take it. She was going to stand there and fight for herself.
Yeah.
And stand there and say, hey, I'm uncomfortable. This person's here. But if it was a cop or a security guard that she was comfortable with, she would have never done that.
Probably wouldn't have doubted it.
Her guard would have actually been down and she would have never acknowledged it.
Obviously, in this case, the first instinct is to look at the boyfriend. It sounds like most of y'all think that he wasn't the one who did it, but that he knows something that he's not fully telling.
I think
That
he,
for
I
sure.
think
That
he
for sure.
knows something that he's not telling because they were on the phone for an hour, and to this day he will not tell anyone, not even her parents or anyone, what they talked about for that hour.
That's the thing, why?
Well, it makes you wonder if she
And-
did say something to him. Oh, there's somebody
Yeah.
here
Is that
watching
why-
me,
is
and
that
he
why
just
sorry?
Yeah.
and he
And
that's
the
what I'm
whole
saying.
reason
Like
she
it's
went
like-
to this payphone is because he put FUB
Yeah.
in her pager.
That's what it
his
said.
code.
Yep.
But if Billy wasn't involved, then who was?
Can't get enough of Taken Too Soon? Check out bonus content exclusive to Times subscribers at GainesvilleTimes.com/TakenTooSoon. See photos, read old articles, review documents, and watch videos from our interviews. Subscribe today to dive deeper into this cold case mystery. Find the bonus content link in the show notes. And now back to the show.
Some have pointed at one of Elaine's ex-boyfriends, Jeremiah. There isn't much in the case file about Jeremiah, but there are 2 witness statements included in the file which have similarities that led Hall County to put Jeremiah on their radar.
The first witness statement does not mention Jeremiah at all, but in an effort to show similar details between the 2 statements, we'll start with the first in the file given by a witness we'll call Jen. On October 1st, 1999, Jen, a possible eyewitness to Elaine being on the phone at Zack's food rack on September 20th, was interviewed by Lieutenant Marty Nix.
In the interview, Jen stated that she had been coming home from taking her mother to work at Fielddale Farms, a chicken processing plant located in Murrayville, when she saw a, quote, blonde-headed girl on the telephone at Zack's food rack, end quote. Jen went on to say that at the same time that she noticed the blonde on the payphone, she also noticed, quote, 3 Mexican guys in an older model Cutlass, end quote. Jen went on to describe the Cutlass as being tan and having gray primer on the hood. Jen told Lieutenant Nix that she observed 2 of the males sitting in the front seat and the third sitting in the back seat of the Cutlass wearing a cowboy hat.
Jen went on to state, quote, the car was catty-cornered, kind of like to the back of Zack's, so that, you could tell that they were watching, looking at something, end quote.
Yes, I remember talking to her, and I believe Sergeant Lanick was with me during that interview. I'm not sure. But she gave a statement describing that she was traveling approximately the same time, and she recalled seeing a subject on the payphone. And the best of my recollection, her statement was 3 Hispanic males were in a tan Cutlass with a primer hood, I believe. And she thought it was very suspicious. And she even had mentioned it to her mother at a later time that perhaps, she was concerned about it. So something triggered her into, this is not right. And she gave that statement.
Jen told Lieutenant Nix that the reason she remembered the details of this event was because she had almost turned around because she was worried and wanted to know what the blonde-headed girl was doing on the phone. She stated it was very strange for the young girl to be on the telephone at that time of night and that she was concerned for the girl's safety. In that statement, Jen states that she left Fielddale at about 11:20 p.m. and drove by Zack's food rack around 11:30. Jen described the girl on the payphone as wearing a t-shirt and being very young-looking.
The same day that Lieutenant Nix took Jen's witness statement, the Hall County Sheriff's Office issued a BOLO, or a be on the lookout, for a, quote, tan, older model Cutlass with a gray primer hood occupied by several Hispanic males, end quote.
The BOLO stated that, quote, the subjects are possible witnesses to the disappearance of Jacqueline Elaine Nix, missing from Hall County, Georgia, and recovered deceased in Gwinnett County, Georgia, end quote. The BOLO was issued for Georgia, Florida, Alabama, South Carolina, and Tennessee.
What makes this particular witness statement so intriguing is that the 3 Hispanic males described by Jen seem to mirror 3 Hispanic males that were mentioned in a completely separate witness statement, which was taken by investigator James Evans 18 days later.
Hey, true crime junkies of North Georgia, are you aware of what's going on around you? Find out by signing up for our free newsletters from the Times. You'll get local news in your inbox daily, including at least 1 free article a day about what's happening in Hall County. And now back to the show.
The second witness statement, given by a witness we'll refer to as Raul, which mentions 3 Hispanic males, came on October 19, 1999. Raul, a 16-year-old student at East Hall High School at the time, told the Hall County Sheriff's Office that he had heard that Elaine Nix owed her ex-boyfriend Jeremiah some money for cocaine.
Raul told Hall County investigator Evans that Jeremiah had 2 other guys, quote, handle his business. Raul stated that the other 2 guys were Hispanic males named Oscar and Victor. Raul stated that Oscar and Victor picked Elaine up at Zack's food rack, either poisoned her or gave her a lethal amount of drugs, and took her to the spot where her body was found.
Elaine was not a big drug person. No, she might have smoked some pot every now and then, but she was not like
A meth head or
meth head,
crackhead or nothing.
a coke head, like anything like that.
Yeah, me too.
Investigator Evans recognized one of the names given by Raul and pulled criminal records for Oscar and Victor, along with the criminal records of one of Victor's relatives. Investigator Evans had remembered arresting Victor and his relative Juan for terroristic acts and that they both had outstanding warrants.
Nothing appears to have come from either of these 2 witness statements. The tan, older model Cutlass with the gray primer hood was never located, and the 3 Hispanic men mentioned in Raul's statement appear to have been ruled out as suspects, as there was no other mention of the 3 in the remainder of the report.
There is no other mention of Jeremiah in the case file, aside from him being one of Elaine's ex-boyfriends and the fact that he supposedly attempted to call her the day of her disappearance. Although Marty Nix told us that Jeremiah had been interviewed by law enforcement in our interview with the former investigator in the Times studio, no transcripts of that interview were included in the documents Hall County supplied us as a result of our open records request.
For certain he was interviewed. He was never a person of interest, of great interest. There was nothing, in order for somebody, and let me go back and explain. We could go up on a crime scene and say, hey, you need to go look at Jodo, whatever. He's shady, or he's, the ex-boyfriend or the he owes him money. Okay. We go back and you have to make a nexus. You have to make a connection. Okay. Well, yeah, maybe you didn't like the guy, but how can we put you at the scene or what, nothing ever materialized to make him a person of interest. And, I'm not just saying that he was discount. You never say that because there's always, there can always be another avenue that you didn't look at, but nothing ever brought him to the surface. And usually when we were running investigations and we were, working and, when you narrowed in on a lead and you started seeing a connection, you followed it and you follow it to the dead end. And sometimes it goes sometimes it goes to a different place. And my guys and my girls that worked with me, we always would follow this rabbit trail, and you follow it till it ends. And that's what we try to do.
What is clear is that Hall County excluded Jeremiah as a possible person of interest early in the investigation.
Well, I know they said also that she was talking to Jeremiah or something, but at the time that this was all going on, Jeremiah's girlfriend was also pregnant. So it may showed up Jeremiah's number, but it might not have been actually Jeremiah because Jeremiah's, so actually they had a baby and got married. It could have very well been her, but no, I don't feel like Jeremiah could have done anything to hurt Elaine. I really don't. He may know something.
I'm just say I disagree that he may know something.
I did say that. I didn't say that.
People
I
have
said,
their own opinion, yeah.
I did say that. That's not saying that Jeremiah don't know something.
Yeah.
But as far as actually knowing, like hurting her, no, I don't ever see Jeremiah do anything like that.
Therefore, both of Elaine's most recent significant others, Billy Millwood III and Jeremiah, were both eliminated as suspects by Hall County at the start of the investigation.
But Marty Nix is vigilant to find that Cutlass.
I remember after that statement, we were aggressively looking for a vehicle matching that description. And I've been looking for that vehicle ever since.
Tune in next week as we continue to break down the theories on what happened to Elaine.
Do you have any information you'd like us to look at regarding Elaine's case?
If so, please email tips to Greg Finan at Gainesville Times. That's GregFinan at GainesvilleTimes.com.
Check out bonus content exclusive to Times subscribers at GainesvilleTimes.com/taken-too-soon. See photos, read old articles, review documents, and watch videos from our interviews. Subscribe today to dive deeper into this cold case mystery. Find the bonus content link in the show notes.
The music in this podcast was by Ben Ingram.
If you like the Taken Too Soon podcast, be sure to give us a rating wherever you listen.
Thanks for listening. This has been Taken Too Soon, the Elaine Nix story.